There's a vet posting over at Democratic Underground how he was in Iraq 10 years ago, 2004, and this last month, June, had so many terrible holidays or anniversaries or whatever in it, as well as other events. He says, it just pushed me too far. And he tried to commit suicide. He slashed up his wrists. There was blood all over the place. He ran out in the front yard, passed out. His wife called 911, and they took him to the hospital. And then he checked himself into the psych ward of the Veterans Administration for a month. And he just got out, and he's telling his story about basically this is what the war did to me. And he's got a wife and young kids, and he says, I feel mostly good and mostly optimistic right now. Sorry for what I did to my wife, kids, and parents. Don't feel any guilt or remorse toward myself. Numb is the best way to describe my feelings right now. As before, images, thoughts, and regrets about the war permeate my head nearly nonstop. I have to take care of this stuff before it kills me. Now, I can't speak to this particular vet. I'm not licensed anywhere right now. I used to be on the roster of psychotherapists with the state of Vermont, which gave me legal authority to hang out a shingle and call myself a psychotherapist and practice psychotherapy in Vermont. But I only did that for 2 years. And frankly, I was, I had a consulting practice. This was back before I was doing radio. I had a consulting practice that was almost entirely on the telephone, and my clients were almost entirely psychiatrists and psychologists. And mostly what I was doing was I was teaching them NLP and working through really problematic cases that they had and providing them with different frames and different ways to approach these particular problematic cases. And I write about some of that in a book I wrote called Walking Your Blues Away, which, and I don't want to turn this into a pitch for my own book because there's a lot of good resources for this. But I want to tell you about this. There are ways to resolve those horrible memories and put them in the past where they belong and drain them of color and turn them black and white and turn the sound off and just to put them behind you. There are ways to do that, and they are fairly straightforward. And they fall into two broad categories. One that I've never written about, but I know about, and now we're starting to get some good research on that, and that's the use of psychedelic drugs. I don't encourage anybody to do that without somebody with them who really knows what they're doing in an appropriate context. The other, which doesn't involve any drugs at all, is called bilateral therapy. And bilateral therapy began in a big way in the modern era back in the late 1700s. In the 1780s and 1790s, there was a guy by the name of Franz Anton Mesmer. He was an Austrian, as in the country next to Germany, not the one near New Zealand. And he was a psychiatrist. Or he actually wasn't a psychiatrist. He was that was back in the days when you could basically declare yourself anything. And Mesmer came up with this theory that what healed us was the power of the moon. And so he developed a system where he would place a person on basically a fainting couch, a love chair, kind of, where they could recline slightly, but they were still inclined so that their face was available to his hand. And he would put his left hand up in the air toward the moon and his right hand in front of their face and wave it from side to side. And while he was doing this, he would have them discuss with him their illness. Now, he very quickly learned this did not treat things like gonorrhea. Right? This was not useful for organic bacterial infections, viral infections, wounds, but it was spectacular for what was referred to back in that day as hysteria, which would include all forms of post-traumatic stress disorder, people who are traumatized by abuse, whether it was childhood abuse or adult abuse, spousal abuse or boss abuse or cultural abuse. He was just having spectacular results, both with psychological illnesses and with people who were having physiological expressions of psychological illnesses. So this became big. Ben Franklin went over to Paris to see a demonstration of Mesmer doing this. Mesmer was basically licensing people to do mesmerism all over Europe, and Franklin wanted to bring it back to the Americas. He sat with the French Academy of Sciences, which he had recently been admitted to, and they watched a demonstration of mesmerism. They tried it out on each other. They concluded that maybe there's something to this, but we think he's hyping. And Franklin kind of left it at that. But it was a big deal. That was in the 1780s, 1790s. By the 1830s, I think it was 1834, there was a psychiatrist in Scotland by the name of James Braid who said, this moon stuff is nonsense. Yes, it works. Mesmerism works. Everybody agrees it works. Because what they were doing was basically integrating the left and right hemisphere of the brain. If you move your eyes across the midpoint, back to back, side to side, while thinking of something, it will cause changes in the emotions associated with that thinking. Everybody got that. Everybody got that. So Braid said, this has got to be because the eyes are getting tired or some other internal physiological process. And I will prove that this has nothing to do with the moon by dangling a pocket watch in front of somebody, which is not connected to my body. It's connected to a chain, and not putting my left hand up where the moon is, and I'll produce the same results as Mesmer. And he did. And Braid named this first neurohypnotism in 1834, and then by 1837, 1840, something like that, he called it hypnosis. Freud practiced hypnosis in the 1880s. In fact, his seminal book, Studies in Hysteria, written with Joseph Brauer, his mentor, was all about the case of Anna O, this woman, that they used hypnosis on for both diagnosis and therapy. And Freud repeatedly talked about how he used this hypnosis. This was the most powerful technique ever. And then suddenly, in 1897, Freud had to abandon hypnosis. And bilateral therapies vanished from the face of the earth until about 20 years ago. And I'll tell you how and why after the break. It's an amazing story.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.